All right. So we talked a little bit about the module design, how they're all 16 lessons. They all start with reviewing and revising your 10-year plan. This sheet is actually available in your Get Focused, Stay Focused manual, which we will give to you shortly. But it basically outlines all 3 of the modules, all the lessons that are in those modules, and which lesson number they are. So they all start with reviewing and revising, and they all start with updating that 10-year plan. And in between, you'll see all of the different lessons that we're going to go over more in depth in these next couple sessions. The reason that they were designed this way and the reason they're structured around a 16-lesson plan is because 16 lessons corresponds to 1 unit of optional dual enrollment credit. Currently, Santa Barbara City College is not giving dual enrollment credit for those modules, but if you know that your community college is invested in that dual enrollment program and is in the Get Focused, Stay Focused follow-up initiative, that's an option for you, and that's the reason that it's at 16. So essentially, if you have a freshman coming in that's taken the freshman course and gotten their 3 units for the freshman course, and then 1 unit for each of the follow-up modules that they've completed, they leave with 6 units related to personal development.
So I have 4 questions up here. I will answer them briefly. If I know that they're going to be answered later on, I will answer them very briefly and say, well, it'll be spoken to in more depth. My first question was, what challenges did you face as the 10-year plan became available to teachers? Teachers accessing them. I think that is, you have your Aries login, if you have Naviance, if you have this and that, and so how do you get teachers to actually log in? And that's part of what I was saying with the, I think the counselor is essential. If in every conversation that they have with students that's coming up, then it creates a culture of this is a tool we use. And I also think we're implementing and using them in advisories, and I'm going to print out the summary pages, right? So that they have those at least at the start of the year. But we'll talk about that a little bit more and in more depth when we talk about whole school, okay? Okay, so big question is, how did you balance the loss of class time to accommodate the modules specifically for AP classes? Short answer, we'll go in much more depth, is we placed it in the advisory, the modules in the advisory period. That's plan 1. Plan B was we do it after the AP test. 3-week unit happening across the grade levels. Or 2.5, we've actually abbreviated it.
Except for
English 12.
Because it's time sensitive.
And we do expository reading and writing course, so it lines really nicely with the first lesson that talks about what's next, and it's in there. So that placement will go into much more depth, but I want to make sure I'm answering your questions as we go. How do you structure your advisory program? When do you meet? Which adults serve as advisors on campus? How many advisees? So our advisory program is a 7th period class that is last year became grade specific. So we have 6 periods, and then from 2 to 2:50 is our extended learning advisory period. Each teacher is clustered with grade specific students, and
there's about 28 students in each of them.
And we're going to talk in much more depth about this. Last year, when we implemented the advisory period with the modules, we only chose 3 teachers to do the modules, and we divided, students came in cohorts to those 3 teachers, and then returned back to their advisors. Does that make sense? We'll go into greater depth. But that's how we did it last year, so we had greater fidelity, fewer teachers to train at that point. And how widespread is the college use and education of the 10-year plans? Okay, to that question, not as widespread as we would like.
We're working on it.
Because what's interesting is the college brought it to us, but not all of the college counselors are using it. So it was from Santa Barbara City College that it was developed through the dual enrollment program, but then you have the counselors and advising program, and they're not necessarily utilizing the 10-year plan, and that's something that is being worked upon. But I will tell you, at this training, there are colleges that are here who are trying to figure that out. And let me say one thing, the colleges are teaching the class. So they aren't using the 10-year plan advising, but they're offering the class to their students. And I see your hand, just a second. Many students provide access to college, or does your district provide access to other post-high school education opportunities, trades, apprenticeships, etc.? How would you answer that one? Does your district provide access to other post-high school education opportunities, trades, apprenticeships, etc.?
I would say that Partners in Education does a lot of our trades, internships, and apprenticeships. So we have an outside organization called Partners in Ed in Santa Barbara County. They arrange our mock interviewers, our guest speakers, and they get our students involved in internships out in the community. So I say it wouldn't be our district because we utilize that source that's already in place to do that for us. So if you don't have an outside source like that, or you don't know yet if you have an outside source, I would say the district is going to start getting requests because students are going to want to get that hands-on experience. So either tap into those resources that are already available or see if your district will start one.
We have to move quickly. Can you?
I was just going to plug into that.
And then I see your question.
Say, get to know your career technical education department, because unless they're old school and they're only calling that vocational ed, which is like a pre-1990s, they should be building up those apprenticeships.
Thank you, yes.
Yeah.
Alignment. Thank you. And your question?
Just for the advisory period, is that every day for you guys?
Every day, yes.
It's Tuesday through Thursday because Mondays we have our meeting schedule, so it takes the spot of our meeting.
So you don't have it on Friday?
We have it Monday through Friday. Oh, Tuesday through Friday.
And it's required every student does it?
Yes.
And when you're not doing the modules, what do they do during advisory?
Getting academic support. Okay. And I'm giving very brief because we'll go into it more, and I just want to make sure we get into module 1 because that would not be good if we didn't. All right. So what I want to start with is a quick question, and let's do this actually at your tables for time's sake. Is what did you imagine your future career would be as a sophomore in high school? So if you can just share at your tables, what did you imagine your future career would be as a sophomore? Let's try to get into the heads of our students, right?
We're going to do it at our tables, but just so you know, teaching strategy that we use with the freshmen is find your soulmates. So somebody has similar shoes on or similar footwear. Yeah. So you guys can do it at your table, but you might want to, I use that to match up my students in class.
All right. So what I would like for you to do, and it's okay because if you don't have your manuals, we're going to start in the module anyways. I just wanted to make sure you had access to that. And we're going to go through what that manual is. But right now you have the module out. It looks like this, module 1. You're opened up to page 3, which is the table of contents. And what I want you to do is read through the table of contents, and counselors, I want you to put a C next to one of the lessons that would be a great push-in, where you could actually go in and support the module teacher. Teachers, the ones that you think your students need the most, and if you could just star that. And then what I'm going to have over here are some stickers, so once you choose which lesson you think is most important, if you can come up and note which one it is up here, so I can kind of get an understanding of where you see your focus being. So I think it's really, as educators, you are the experts on what your students need, and so just to be able to see up here, you notice, and if you have, let me open up my table of contents. Lesson 3, which careers will be in the highest demand in the next decade? Lesson 5, writing an education plan for a high demand career. Lesson 10, which is which post-secondary option is right for you. And this is really that exposure to the different paths that you can take. Lesson 13, how to afford college regardless of individual circumstances. We have one with 16, and the updating of the 10-year plan, that reflection piece always. So you see the range, and I didn't see how to conduct online research for college and post-secondary options. So with that in mind, we're gonna go through the content of Module 1. And as we go through, there's going to be a slide that says tips and tricks. And we're now in session 2 in your binder. And I saw some of you kind of being like, the PowerPoints aren't in here. That's because they're in session 2. I moved them into session 1. Okay, so you'll see those PowerPoints in there. But we're now in session 2 if you want to follow along. And what I would think is most helpful is those tips and tricks. So we've implemented them, and these are ways to save time and make it more efficient, and maybe some obstacles we saw and how we fix them. Okay. So I said that the question always is, where do you place these modules? So I just want to give you a very brief idea. Advisory extended learning with all teachers. Advisory extended learning with master teachers. This was in the session 1, but core subjects, English and history, seem to be the ones that are getting it. Junior seminar. So there are some schools who are actually creating a junior seminar in their advisory periods or at some part of their day. And then focused Fridays. So it's something that's happening every Friday or for a section of Fridays throughout the year. So those are some ideas. Each of your schools are very different, and there's still even more ideas. So I think just as we're going through listening to the content, I want you to be able to start to think about where it seems like it would be best placed for your school, okay? If you have questions, write them down. I want to be able to answer them, but I just want to give that to you to think through. So, one thing that you need to be aware of, by design, these modules are research-based. So they are connected to long-standing Department of Labor and Bureau, or the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. There we go. I just reversed that. Those are the websites that are used for this research. How many of you have found an amazing career website that then disappeared? Right? Because they're based on grant funding. And so this curriculum really wanted to use long-standing websites that we know aren't going to just disappear. Okay? So they're not going to be as like beautiful, maybe as the Who Do You Want to Be, which I love.com, great website, but they're going to be there in the future. And so they really made a conscious choice to use those websites. So these are just teaching practices, and for some of you, you're like, we know this. But when you're working with 20 different teachers in the English department, right? Sometimes it's important to go over those kind of basic things. So begin each class by giving an introduction and state the objective of the day. Guide the students through instruction. So we had, I'll be honest, we have amazing teachers coming here at school, but we had some teachers who this was new to them, it felt foreign, so they handed them, the students, the workbook, right? And they said, okay, go. It didn't work. We know that it doesn't work. So you can't see it like that. It's meant, this guides them through it, the 10-year plan guides them through it, but it really, if you want it to be meaningful, you have to have those conversations. Guide the students through the conversations, post the websites that the students will use in a common place. They are in here, they are on the 10-year plan. The students, you know, they can find them, but Amy has found that the most important thing is just having it multiple places for those different learners, right? And then our goal is to have a check-in with those students each day. And Amy has a clipboard. She writes, or has the teachers write down the future career. And as she's walking around, she's talking to them about that. So thinking about ways to build relationships during the module implementation.
And once again, the 10-year plan itself, if they're divided by class period, say it's in a common English class or a common history class or a common advisory class, you can filter it so it'll print out what their current ideal career is that they've selected right now. So then you can go up to him and say, I see your current 10-year plan says this, that you're interested in this career. Is that still current, or are we going to be changing that in the next couple weeks? So it allows you to mine that data, that it makes those daily check-ins not something like, oh, I have to be there for 3 or 4 minutes with each kid. It's impossible. But just the like, hey, this is what you said you wanted. Is that still the case, or are we working on something new?
And I think about, as you're training your advisory teachers, you know, talking to them about that being the goal, that the 10-year plan would be used to have those meaningful conversations. So tips and tricks, workbook can be used as a rough draft and taking notes. Online should be their final draft. Keep track of FAQs for next session and or year, and use class roster to record ideal careers. So those are just, again, tips and tricks. I'm gonna skip the, so I wanted to have I'm gonna for time, I'm going to do this after, but I want to make sure I get through the module. So lessons 1 and 2, students begin the module by reviewing their 10-year plan online. Every one of the modules start the same way. So when I think about that 6 days, 10-year plan days, you could, if you incorporated that school-wide, you could be updating the 10-year plan at the beginning of the year, school-wide, so it's not coming out of, just the English or just the history, and you could be also doing that at the end of the year, like you have a school-wide 10-year plan check-in day. So now you've taken these 16 lessons and you've narrowed them to 14. I find that figuring out how to narrow the number of classes or lessen the number of classes helps with buy-in. So that's one strategy you could do. Lessons 3 through 6 are researching high demand careers. And students, I will tell you, this is one of those lessons that they kind of kick their feet at. They're like, why do I have to research a career that is not my desired career? Well, first of all, it's to get them access to the software that projects into the future and says which careers are going to be in high demand 10 years from now. Students had no idea that there was an algorithm out there that could kind of project what are going to be promising careers for their future. And when they see that, they think that's really cool. So I think it's part of our job to say, we want you to know what careers are growing. And if they find that their career, let's say they want to be a marine biologist, we live by the ocean, so many of our students do, it is not a high demand career. Now, does that mean I'm trying to tell them not to become a marine biologist? No, but what I am going to say is you better be the best marine biologist out there because you have a lot of competition, okay? That other student who's coming from poverty doesn't understand the growing industry sectors, all of that, to give them a tool that they can use, yes, as 10th graders, but when they have to do a career change in their college years or after, this website is still going to be there. It's the ONET. So it helps them to identify high demand careers. And then they have to do a career interest survey. In the freshman year, they research 3 careers of their choice. And the sophomore year, they have to research a high demand career of their choice, which it might not be their very first one. They have to write an education plan and develop a course schedule. Now, we had tried to do this. So imagine, I think there's 40 of us here, and there's class of 36, right? Sophomores, trying to get them all to write an education plan and develop a course schedule for their each individual career. That was a struggle. So we do lesson 3 as a group activity. Instead of having every student create an education plan for their desired high demand career, they research and they choose which one they like, but we choose one as a class that's a high demand career. We then go in and look at which colleges offer training for that, and then we create an education plan together. One of the goals that I have is to teach them the process. They don't have to all look up their individual one. I think that's more appropriate for the 11th and 12th grade. So I'm telling you that that's an adaptation I make to the curriculum for lessons 3 through 6. Any questions? Is that clear? And then what it has them do is look up, if I had a 2-year degree, associate's degree, or a 4-year or a 6-year, what are the high demand degrees based on education level? And it has them supposed to do that individually. So what I do is I say, all right, you guys are going to do the 2-year degree, you're going to do the 4-year, and you're going to do the professional degree, and then they present it. So the more we can make it dynamic, rather than them sitting all at a computer doing it individually, I think in the 10th grade, the better. And I'm making those suggestions to the publisher as well. So just at this point, that change isn't in here, but we are talking with them about how, what modifications can be made for 10th graders. All right, and then, like I said, lesson 5, write an education plan together using local colleges' websites and general education packet. I do want to show you, we brought a few of our resources here. Let me see here. It is the general education plan. Cal State Channel Islands, I know that's a close school for us. It's actually one of the greatest options for our students affordability-wise and ability to get in. But a lot of times our students don't consider it because they're looking for the status schools or they're assuming that City College is just the next step. And I want them to consider it because, for example, the nursing program at Cal State Channel Islands is not impacted. Santa Barbara City College's is. Cal State or San Diego State is. So, but all that to say, they have a fabulous general education packet that allows students to go through. It says which classes, how many classes they need to take in each requirement, and it lists the titles of the classes. The reason why I bring this in is because our students say they want to go to college, but many of them have not actually ever looked in a course catalog to see how different college classes are. And what I found was when they saw that for the English requirement, they could, what is it? One of the courses is Arts, Business and Economic and Literature. Okay, that sounds horrible to me, I'm an English teacher, but for a student who's so sick of English and just wants to do business, they're like, oh wait, I can take a class in business for my English requirement. I don't know about yours, but my students did not know that. They didn't know that they had to take didn't have to just take calculus, they could take, the math of music, right? These are classes that they don't know about. So I found that the general ed packet is really important, and so I use that for the education plan. If your local colleges isn't one that's easily accessible, use Cal State Channel Islands, and it's just to get them exposed to the different types of classes. It's a great resource.
And just as a reference for those of you who will be teaching both the freshman class and the follow-up modules, or the teachers that are going to be teaching the freshman class, in the freshman course, it has them create an education plan, and when we didn't have the follow-up modules, we would do the whole education plan. What we've started to do now with the follow-up modules is the freshman year we focus on just talking about general education. And we do a GE plan for the freshmen. And then the sophomore year, they do a 4-year plan together. And then their junior year, they're doing their own plan for themselves individually. So it builds each year rather than having to create a 10-year education plan their freshman year. It's 2, 4, and then whatever it is that they're interested in. So they get the whole gamut of different levels.
So that's lessons 3 through 6. Lessons 7 through 9, thinking that these were written with Common Core English language standards in mind, has an autobiographical statement for your 25th high school reunion, and it involves a project where they present that. So them having to project into their future. Some schools have chosen to change it to 10 because it matches more with the 10-year plan, but others have tried to get it outside of status and kind of that and think about in the future after family, after kids. So that is the design of Module 1. 7 through 9 is the autobiographical statement. Then they do the post-secondary education and training options, college affordability, and college and career readiness. And this is that great moment where they see the different pathways they can take. They can see how much different things cost. And they also can see if they qualify. How many of your students say that they're going to UCLA or USC or whatever it is in your state? A lot of mine, and they're getting 2.0s because they're a baller and they feel like they can do it, right? I mean, so there's this moment of reality check where they see, are my dreams, is this college that I want to go to matching with the grades and the work that I'm doing? So it goes through 2-year, 4-year, post-secondary good fit, how to forward. And if you look on 45 through 46, it has the 30 ways to reduce college. So I want to give you a chance to just look through that for a minute. Question?
No, question. Okay.
Comment. Okay, yeah, quick comment, go ahead.
Well, just looking at the list, 47 to 48, number 16 being an RA, that's what I did for 3 years. But I didn't learn about that until I became a freshman at college. And then, wait, what do you guys get to do? You get free room and board, you get your own room, and they pay your meals. And all I have to do is stay up on the weekends and babysit the hall. Sounds great. But we don't have those conversations because we're too busy trying to make sure that we're A through G and trying to get there, let alone make sure. So, no, that's a really good list. I think that was really good.
Yeah, and the options are available. And I feel like as an English teacher, I wanted to have those conversations. My students figured out that if they could start talking to me about college access or future access, that I would go off topic because I was so passionate about it and wanting to give them access to that information. Well, now I don't have to cheat in order to do that. There's a place where I know they're getting that information. So that's the college affordability. Are you ready? Prepared, admission requirements. And it was in this part that we had projects go up. And this is where the other students started to see, oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that I had to get that GPA and that school offered training for that career. And I had one student who wanted to be a fish and game warden. And she had a plan to go to a 4-year university. Well, the best schools for a fish and game warden is a 2-year in Northern California. And she changed her complete plan because of that. And then each lesson ends with them updating the module and reflecting on what they did. When you think about the 10-year plan, it is not year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4. It is all of these elements of research that then help them update at the very end. When I first started teaching this class, I thought it was just like a list of like year 1, year 2. No, it's so comprehensive. It's all those kind of elements of knowledge they need to make that plan. It's not just the plan. If that makes sense. So we're going to do, actually it's going to be 5 minutes before we do lunch. So what I would like to do is give you a few minutes. This is what we were going to have you do, is look at one lesson, read through, kind of think about how you would teach this or what you would modify it, and so maybe we'll do that when we get back. But I do want to answer any questions that you might have about Module 1. Okay. Once
It's on there.
you see it? Oh, thank you. Does your 7th period, okay, confidential day? Yes, it 7th period is within the contract day, but our teachers are not allowed to teach. So what we did is we did the master teachers who volunteered to teach that class, and then we paid them a small stipend. So that's how we got around the contractual issue. And I worked with the union. I went in and said, is this something that you feel like we could do if we stipend them, if they volunteered? And they said yes. But that was one of our main issues with that. How much resistance did you experience from guidance
Sorry, that's fine.
how much guidance, what does it say?
How much did guidance resist you? In other words, stepping on their territory.
Okay, I think there was some of that. There really was some, we already do this. And so my response, and I honestly, like after doing this for 3 or 4 years, please come in and help. We need the counselors. Like, this is a school-wide initiative that requires teachers across grade levels and across departments to buy into comprehensive college and career guidance. We know it's best for our students. Counselors are the experts. Help us, right? What I was the lead teacher, right? And I'm passionate and I want it, but if I had a counselor who said, of these 16 lessons, I'm gonna do a push-in for 3 or 4 of these, and I'm gonna be the Get Focused, Stay Focused counselor, and I'm gonna come in and do those lessons so that teacher can prep for the next lessons. I really believe that the resistance to this program from the English and the history or wherever it's getting placed decreases. We need the counselors, and I feel like counselors, if there's a way that you can make this easier to your job, like maybe you're not doing the giant session in the auditorium now, but you're working within the classrooms to teach those lessons in a relationship environment, that would be so important. And I really believe that for Get Focused, Stay Focused, you have to have a lead teacher, you have to have a lead counselor, and you have to have a lead administrator who just says, this is on my radar, this is something I do. That makes sense.
And the average counselor to student ratio in the state of California is like 650 to 1. Right. So if there's an opportunity for us to help our counselors limit that ratio to where they know that they're getting this in their Get Focused, Stay Focused classes, and they're already coming in with that bit of information, I can now add to that bit of information or make that information specific to their plan as I'm working with them. So I think it's an opportunity to bring the counselors in, but also let the counselors know, like, we're here to take a little off of your 650 to 1 ratio.
Okay, there's 3 more minutes, so please just wait before you pack up, and then I will let you leave on time, promise, okay? I will stop answering. So do we need to be certified to teach the modules? No, but you need a good lead teacher who's gonna train your module teachers, and so that's, I think, and them feeling prepared. For articulated credit, no.
And
It's going to be
to add to that, I think it's better if you, not better, but I think it's, when you're picking teachers to teach it, it'd be great to pick from all sorts of different types of disciplines and departments. Like when we picked our lead teachers, I didn't just pick people from the English and the history department. I wanted to bring in art teachers and science teachers and math teachers. So there's the wide perspective of, okay, this is a field that I have a little of expertise in versus just an English or a history teacher. So bringing in, if you're going to do it in a way where you're bringing in multiple teachers from different departments, add somebody who's been in the business field. Add somebody who did something before they started teaching.
The next question was, how many hours is it? It's designed to be 16 hours. Some of those lessons are going to be shorter, and some of those lessons are going to take longer based on your student population. And that's why one of the things that I think is really important, and I have the tool that I did with with our department, was they had the lessons, the time, the materials, what needs to be front loaded, and whether lab is needed. And this is how I worked through it with our department. We sat down and we just went through and said, you are the expert. You're the teacher. You know that you can get this done in 15 minutes, and you know that that's going to take 2 days. So we mapped it out together. I really believe in trusting the expertise of your teachers. I did not want to say, oh, it's going to take 16 hours and then realize it took longer or less. I wanted them to look through the curriculum and decide. And I'll tell you how I did that, even with subs and all that kind of piece. And what do you do for the follow-up modules when they have changed the website information? So Amanda Lake, who is in the back, has been working to update the 10-year plan. Yeah, if you can wave. What we're hoping is some changes are going to happen to the modules, where rather than the website or the workbooks having the modules, it's just going to have the journaling. The website is going to be up to date on a regular. This is one of our ideas very early on. That the website will always be up to date, and she has been going through those edits, and I think part of this get focused, stay focused, I'm just saying this out loud, I haven't really, is that is done quarterly, or that, because the websites change, and that's just the nature. And so if you have a curriculum that's based on online research, it has to be consistently updated. So I think that there's going to be a quarterly review or something along those lines of those websites. Does that answer your question? Yes. And we're doing that right now, and you should see changes already made for next. All right. So what we wanted to start with is giving you an opportunity to actually work in the modules. It's going to be 5 minutes, and what we would like at the end is to have your charts along the walls to see, to share ideas. And so the way that's going to work is we're going to ask you, we're actually going to be in 9 groups because there's 9 tables, perfect. We're going to ask each group, and we're only going to do one lesson. I think I pulled up the wrong PowerPoint, but you're going to, read through the lessons in your group. This is the wrong slide. Hold on, I'm sorry. Let me go here. Very similar, but specific to it. Okay, yes. Okay, so you're going to divide you into 9 groups. Each group will be assigned one lesson. You're going to read through the lesson your group is assigned. And then in your Get Focused, Stay Focused manual, that's that tree killer of a book. In section 5 is the teacher's manual for the modules. So we want to get you accessing the materials that have already been created for you. So you're going to turn to that section 5, find the lesson that you're assigned, kind of read through briefly what they did, look at it in the workbook.
What section again, I'm sorry?
Section 5. And they do the page numbering differently in there so that your lesson plans don't have to change if they add something to the book. So they number it by section versus by a page number, so that section 5 is all the module instructions, and if anything's ever added, it's added to the back of that section so that your numbers in your pacing guides and your instructions can all stay the same and not have to change every time there's a new edition or new version.
So section 5 is the module instructional guide, okay? So what we would like for you to do on your chart paper is what we asked our department to do when we did a PD for the modules. We asked them to look at and think about, based on your experience, knowing your students, how much time do you think it's going to take? What materials will you need? Is there any vocabulary that needs to be front loaded? And Amy, would you maybe write this on here? Time, materials, vocab, and if a lab is required. And then if there's anything that you know because you're a counselor or because you saw that awesome TED Talk or some type of an enrichment activity you think would be great to add to this lesson. So let me say this one more time. We're going to be looking at Module 1. I'm going to assign you a lesson. You're going to look at the materials you have in front of you, the Get Focused, Stay Focused manual and the module. And you're going to spend some time thinking about, based on your experience with your students, how much time do you think it's going to take? What materials will you need? What concepts or vocabulary need to be front-loaded? And if a lab is required. And if there's any awesome tie-in that you know would be great to add to this lesson.
Are you talking about computer lab when you say lab?
Lab, yes, computer lab. And you'll see most lessons require it, but not all. So then what I'm hoping is we can put these up on the board, and you now have a cheat sheet that you can take a picture of for when you go back to implement the modules. All right? So I'm going to ask this table, you're going to be doing lesson 3. The lessons 1 and 2 are updating the 10-year plan, so we're going to start with lessons 3.
All right. I'm over in the corner now. I moved. So it looks like overwhelmingly lesson number 5 was the majority vote, which is your education plan, so getting it personalized to them. But we also got revisiting the keystone topics, creating a career interest survey for a STEM career, 9, which is examining the colleges that offer your major, and 10, which is that college comparison spreadsheet, and then 14, which is creating a timeline for applying for financial aid. So the junior module is very... Oh, and 15, updating your resume for applying for colleges, financial aid, and scholarships. So the junior module, I tell my juniors when they come in every year, I say, how many of you have senior friends? And the majority of them raise their hand. And I say, how many of your senior friends are crying and stressed out because of their college applications and they're trying to get all of their paperwork together because they didn't do it last year? And the majority of them raise their hands. So I tell them that if you take and spend your time in your junior module wisely and you get that already now, you're not going to be that stressed out senior who's trying to get their college application timeline all together and their applications all turned in at the very last minute. You can be the one who finishes theirs in the summer or right before they start school, and then the only thing that you have to worry about is your academic classes versus having to do that on top of those academic classes. So I'm going to take you through a walkthrough of what the junior module looks like, and then we'll do the same thing that we did for module 1, where we have you dive into one of those particular lessons that we identified as a keystone lesson and give your ideas on how you do that, because I think it's really beneficial to hear all the ideas from different people as they come up with them. So as always, lesson 1 is having them review their 10-year plan. So looking back at who they were as a sophomore, and I guarantee you'll see the biggest jump between their sophomore and their junior year. So having them go back and look at what they wrote their sophomore year, and the nice thing about the 10-year plan is it archives everything. So they can go back to the very first entry from when they were a freshman and look back at their freshman one, and then they can look back at their sophomore one and look back at their junior one. So it's sort of like an online journal in that way, is that they can look back to what their original answer was and then what it turns into at the end. So that's nice. So they look back, review their current 10-year plan. They look at their skills inventory, which they've created their freshman year and developed over the course of their sophomore year. They look at the skills that they had and the skills that they needed to learn. They adjust accordingly. So if they've learned some of those skills, they can learn them from the skills I need to learn up to the skills that I know. If they've learned ones that they didn't identify that they needed, they can then move them up. So their online skills inventory, they move things from skills I needed to skills I have, add more skills that they know they need. Some teaching tips: print out your school's graduation requirements and the A through G requirements. That's for the state of California. So the state of California refers to the A through G requirements. Those are the requirements needed by our high school graduates to get into a 4-year university straight out of high school. So I don't know if you're from out of state, they might be called something different, but in the state of California, they're called the A through G requirements. And I have them take a look at those just as like a checklist. Am I on track to graduate? If I want to go to a 4-year university, what do I still need? Yeah?
I would say the third thing to add that is your school's UC doorways list.
Yes.
Courses they take down email.
Yes. So UC doorways as well. Lessons 3 through 4 are researching STEM careers and creating a career interest survey around that STEM career. Just like the high demand careers, this is something that you might get a kickback on. I'm not interested in STEM. I'm not interested in that field. But as Erin and I always say, a lot of those careers are also the high demand careers. And as they see that that connection is made of these are the ones that are going to have openings in the future, Erin and I always say we're doing you a disservice if we don't educate you on what's going to be open when you graduate from your post-secondary education. If we are telling you to go pursue a field that's not growing, like we said, we don't want to tell you not to do that, but we want to tell you you've got to be the best. You've got to have the experience, you've got to have the skills, you've got to have the degree also. Tips, print out online resources. I find that when they're scrolling through the list of STEM careers on ONET, they scroll through and then they're like, I didn't find anything I liked. Whereas if you print it out, I printed out the list of STEM careers and I had them take a highlighter to it. And I said, I want you to go through the list and I want you to highlight one that catches your attention. So if you're like, I don't know what that is and that sounds interesting, or I could be interested in that, I have them highlight it instead of scrolling on the computer because they scroll to the bottom. I'm done. I've got a lot of I'm doners. I'm done. So I have them print that out, or I print it out for them and I have them highlight instead of scroll through it. And then another one is 2 Million Minutes. Have any of you seen the 2 Million Minutes documentary? So the 2 Million Minutes documentary follows students from India, students from China, and students from the United States that are in their high school years. And it documents how they use their time, both in class and outside of class, and the emphasis of those different cultures placed on their high school age students. And it's kind of a wake-up call for our US students because they're focused on their social lives and what's going on outside of school versus the other cultures where it's like they're already preparing for their career, they're already getting skills in that area. And it brings into that reality of we're already behind. So it's
I would add with that, when it's a nice kind of juxtaposition to the STEM careers because that's their only option, right? They're all wanting to be an engineer and they're all being trained to be an engineer versus when we even mention, oh, you might want to look at these careers, they're like, what? You're ruining our dreams, right? So I think it helps us to give them that like reality check of like, no, we're exposing you, and by exposing you doesn't mean we're forcing you, and you're very fortunate that you are not being forced into having to do a certain career. With one more person needed a binder. Who are you? There you are. Okay, go ahead, Amy.
Lesson 5 is what academic courses are critical to my success, so creating an education plan with those transferable skills. So what classes do I need to take that will teach me the skills that I need for my future job market? We have an article that I've...
Courses in high school?
Yes, courses in high school. And it also has options for dual enrollment, AP, and college courses that they can add into that spreadsheet. So they can say, these are the classes that I've taken that are specialty for high school, and then these are also my dual enrollment courses, my AP courses, my college courses that I've taken. We printed out an article from Forbes that goes through the highest and the lowest paying college majors, and I have my kids look at them. And I have them compare the highest 10 with the lowest 10 and look at the different fields that they're in. And when they see that next to each other, and it's not just us telling them, it's a nationally recognized publication, they're like, oh wait, you kind of are right. And so looking at those different STEM and high demand careers on that highest and lowest paying majors list helps them sort of get that reality check. And knowing that if they're going to go into a field that is one of those lowest paying majors, money is not everything, but also you got to be the best if it's not growing. Forbes, we have the article for you and I can give it to you. Do you want to play it? No. Okay. Lesson 6, choosing a major that matches your chosen career. So we have them look at the different majors on collegeboard.com as well as College Navigator, and it will have them look up the different majors and then what schools offer that major. You can filter it by area, they can filter it by state. So it gives they're amazed at the tools that are available to them, and I'm amazed sometimes at the tools that are available to them because we didn't have these things. They can go on College Navigator, put in a state, put in their area of study, and it'll show every single higher education institution that offers that major. Mind blown when I was teaching this the first time because you had to go all sorts of different places to try and figure out that information, and it's by the book. So it's online now, so they can look at that and then they can filter it. If I want to stay close to home, I want one that offers it within 50 miles of my house. So those options and figuring out those areas. Lessons 6 through 15 are all that post-secondary education process. So after they've chosen a major, which college best fits that major, which is the best known for that, which is the closest to home for me if that's something that I'm interested in, or farthest away from home if that's what I'm interested in. Exploring colleges close to home, exploring colleges within your budget, and then comparing colleges to find the right fit. And a lot of our kids, and I say this because we live in the state of California, a lot of our kids are like, it's too expensive to go out of state. I've heard I can't go out of state because it's too expensive. And then I have to remind them that they live in California, which is one of the most expensive states. So I'm like, sometimes it is cheaper to go out of state because you're paying the out of state tuition on top of their cheaper tuition. So I encourage them to stay in the state of California just because it's important for our economy and building those connections and those networking opportunities. And if they want to work and live in California, then go to school in California. But a lot of them are like, I can't go out of state, it's too expensive. So, but that's the school that's best known for it. So having them explore all of those options. And then comparing those colleges. So I have them, when I had them go into the computer lab, I had them at least look at one community college that offered their area of study or transfer. I had them look at one CSU, at least. They could look at as many as they wanted. One UC, one private, and one out of state, just to get the full gamut. And they can look at as many as they wanted, but I gave them those 5. And I said, find one CSU, find one UC, one community college, one private, and one out of state that offers your major and that are within your feasibility to get into. Starting the college application process, their acceptance probability. What's the average GPA of a student getting into that school? How much does it cost? What are the scholarship essays? Is it just the personal statement, or do they have an additional one that you need to fill out? Because the private schools have an addition, depending on what the school is, they might have an additional essay that they have to fill out, and the night before realizing that they have to write a whole nother essay related to a different school. College application timelines, when are the dates due? And then I'm going to be going into interviews for scholarship foundations, maybe for college admissions. Is my resume up to date, and do I have it ready to go? So if I come into school and they're like, your next day is your interview with such and such school or such and such scholarship, they're not scrambling the night before to update that resume. Some tips. 12 through 13 at our campus are already being done in our English curriculum. So that we saw that as an opportunity to talk to our English teachers and say, you're already doing this, we trust that you're doing it well, can you just take them in so that they can upload that to their tenure plan? Because we know you're already doing it. So can you meld that with the tenure plan and what we're doing and stay focused? I printed out the handouts of the remaining ACT and SAT dates so that they could look at them. And then for their resume, Purdue OWL has an excellent resume and cover letter workshop. If you put in Purdue OWL resume or Purdue OWL cover letter, it pops up with what sections should be in there, how do you refine those sections, what information should be included. So instead of reinventing the wheel, finding those things that are already created. And then as always, with every module, the last one is updating their tenure plan and getting it ready for their senior year. So, like Erin mentioned, some people are putting that first section of the senior module because it's the college applications before that year, because college applications open now in summer. They'd at least get this before college applications open. So depending on what your school does, they are prepared for their college applications even before they open. But if you do that first part of that senior one at the end of the junior one, you can continue it from there. So that's an overview of Module 2.
And because we have extended our time, this is actually for today. We're finished right now. We will walk through Module 2 tomorrow. We'll start with that and going through. But what I hope you see are a couple things. See how there's the career choices course that builds upon or kind of lays the foundation, and then Module 1 and Module 2, they're linked. They're not separate, right? And they're only building upon what they've already done. And so I hope you see that. The other thing is you can see how long this could be, right? And how you in some ways have to either rein it in or choose where to best fit it. The 16 hours is pretty minimal for how much we're going through. And you may want to do 100 different things, but you kind of have to narrow it down, right? And I think that's one thing that we'll talk about. I want to answer questions, so if you need to go, please do that quietly. Feel free, we're not offended. If you have questions, I'd like to answer those, and Amy and I would like to answer them. so we can gather
Any
it.
other post-it
No problem. So the first question is, do you find that students will choose a certain career or major based on easy or hard it appears for the research? How do you address this? That's interesting. Yeah.
Kids will say, I don't want to do that because it looks like it's going to be hard.
Oh, because when they researched it, it looked like it's going to be hard. When I taught it, that was not my experience. I will say, okay, so let me give you this though. I do think it's a reality check. So we had, when they first researched our students, the UC graduate program, they found that our students' expectations dropped. So let me say what I mean. This sounds negative. We had tons of kids who were saying they were going to be doctors. Like tons. None of them understood that it took 11 years of education. So once they realized that there was 11 years of education, it clarified and they were more realistic. So it looked negative, but I actually think it was a positive. Those kids were not demonstrating the others, it solidified, okay, I'm willing to do this. So but I wouldn't say overall that I find students saying, oh, I'm not going to do that career. If anything, like we had a kid who wanted to be a tattoo artist. He's on our panel when we have our site visits. He's like, no, I now need to go and get a business degree because I realize that I may be an artist, but I don't have the skills to run a business. I feel like we see more of that than like, I'm no longer going to do this because that takes too much work. But there is that reality piece. Does that answer your question? Okay.